King Sombra. Sadly, one of the most disappointing villains in G4, something that is almost crazy to say because Sombra in the MLP community is well loved, and I'm not gonna lie, I love his design and his portrayal in Season 9 is almost perfect, but I can't deny that Sombra was one of the first instances of wasted potential in G4, and to me, Sombra became one of the worst villains in MLP. But then the comics came out. These comics not only redeemed Sombra as a character, but also gave us some amazing stories, characters, and even an origin and a finale to Sombra. So today, let's explore the comics that saved Sombra from disappointing villain to one of the most complete and interesting villains in MLP. Our story begins with the first issue of Friendship is Magic. The comic begins in the Crystal Empire where Twilight and Cadence are looking for the journal of King Sombra, and we learn that Sombra was just a normal cult that was found by the Crystal Guards, and that he couldn't really speak, and when he could, he would just say Sombra. Hence, they named him Sombra. In the orphanage, Sombra was quickly casted aside by the other fillies simply because he didn't look like them, everyone except one, a filly named Radiant Hope, which also was considered weird by his other classmates. And quickly the two of them became good friends, they had secret codes and even played together. But one day, Hope would tell Sombra about the Crystal Fair, saying that this is the most beautiful thing in the whole world and that the princess will be there. Sombra was instantly excited about this, so Hope took Sombra to see the Crystal Heart, where both of them could see their future. On one side, Hope would see herself as a princess, but on the other side, Sombra would see himself as, well, Sombra, something that scared him. And it's in here where Sombra would meet Princess Amori, ruler at that time of the Crystal Empire. But she would tell the two fillies that the heart only showed them the future that they could live, and that this one was not certain. On one side, Hope was excited to discover that she was going to be a princess, while on the other side, Sombra was nervous telling the princess what he saw. But Princess Amori would tell Sombra that whatever he saw, he had the power to change it, but Sombra would reassure her that he saw nothing. And when it was time for the Crystal Fair, Hope was excited to show his friend this amazing event, something that they have been planning for months now. But strangely enough, Sombra would start to feel sick, and when the doctors came to see him, they couldn't find any reason of why he was feeling this way. But once the Crystal Fair had concluded, Sombra recovered and everyone thought that the worst had already passed. But the next year, the same thing happened, and this would continue to happen in the following years. Until one day, something new happened. Sombra's dark powers started to appear because of his desire to see the fair. But Hope would use her magic to save his only friend, and she succeeded. Not only that, but she earned her cutie mark representing healing. With her talent finally revealed, Hope would use her magic to heal the ponies of the Crystal Empire. And she would be so effective in fact that she would receive a letter from the two sisters, and they offer her to study with them. With this, Hope's dreams of becoming a princess would be finally coming true. Something that Sombra didn't take lightly because this would mean that both of them would be apart. And he would run away as far as he could, and he knew that if Hope's destiny had found her, then his destiny would find him. And it did. He ran into a red crystal which, strangely enough, seemed to talk to him, presenting itself as his mother, and it would be revealed that Sombra wasn't a pony, but rather an Umbram, a creature made of entirely shadow and smoke. The crystal would tell him that the reason why he felt sick when the Crystal Fair came into the Crystal Empire was because the Crystal Heart is an artifact made to protect light and destroy darkness. So the crystal transported its magic to Sombra, and the crystal would assign him a mission to destroy the Crystal Heart, and telling Sombra that there was an entire Umbram army below ground, waiting to be freed only if Sombra succeeded in this mission. So on that very night, Sombra decided to make his move to steal the Crystal Heart, not before being confronted by Princess Amori, who told him that it's not late for him to change his future. Of course, Sombra would confront her and basically accuse her of lying, and in a fit of rage, he would transform Princess Amori into a crystal. And sadly, Hope would witness everything in that very moment, but Sombra would tell Hope that she could be with him and that together they would conquer and rule the Crystal Empire, but Hope would still try and help his only friend despite his actions. But Sombra sadly didn't accept her help. Hope at this point not only was shocked that her former friend did this, but also disappointed, and she ended up running away of the Crystal Empire. With the princess gone, Sombra would enslave the ponies of the Crystal Empire, while Hope would go to the castle of the two sisters to tell them what happened, something that ended up with the princesses confronting and defeating Sombra. But Sombra wasn't defeating just yet. Sombra would see this as an act of treason, so he would hide the Crystal Empire as a way to torture Hope. Although this would not be the end of Sombra, as in the last panel of the comic we see that he's still alive. Overall, this is an awesome comic, and I'm surprised that I sympathize a lot with Sombra, and his friendship with Hope is just so sweet to see in this comic. And this comic shows us that we're not always the same person that we were at the start, and that people aren't bad from the start, but rather they turn bad in a way or another. And something that I found really interesting in the rereading of this comic was that when the red crystal gives Sombra its powers, Sombra not only changes visually, but the thought bubbles that we see also changes, which makes me think that the Sombra we see later in the comics and in the show is not this Sombra, but rather a brainwashed version of the original Sombra, and that the thing that gave its powers to him is actually controlling him. And if that's the case, the fate of Sombra that we see in the show is more tragic than we initially thought. But this would not be the end of the story, as it would get a 4-part continuation in issue 34, 35, 36, and 37, also known as the Crystal Empire Siege. Let's begin with issue 34. Now this comic is more of a setup to the next issue, but it's still really interesting to talk about. Throughout the comic we see a figure recruiting old foes from the main 6 paths, like Flame and Flam, Iron Will, and Lightning Dust. And something that I like about the comic is that throughout the comic we don't know exactly the intentions of this mysterious figure until the very end, where it gets revealed that this mysterious figure is actually Radiant Hope. And the reason why she did this was to get close to Sombra and bring him back to his physical form. And then we move on to issue 35. In issue 35 we learn what happened to Hope after the disappearance of the Crystal Empire, where we learn that Hope has been living with Princess Celestia and Luna to fulfill his destiny. But recently she was getting distracted because of what she lost, in this case her only friend, so she opted to create her own path, and this meant leaving Princess Celestia and Luna, and in this case her destiny, which led her to follow the same path as Sombra, as she would find the same crystal that gave Sombra his powers. But this crystal not only was to give powers, but also serve as a door to the Umbram dimension, where she would find an Umbram that recognized her, and she would say that she was here to save them. And Hope would tell Sombra how amazing his kind was, something that Sombra didn't believe. But because of a misunderstanding with Hope, Sombra would end up stealing the Crystal Heart, where we would get a fight between the villains that Hope recruited and the main 6, where we get some amazing and really funny moments in this comic, and we even get to see Celestia and Luna getting involved in the battle, although in the end all of this would be in vain, as they would get defeated, with this ending the comic. And then we continue to issue 36. The comic begins with Sombra threatening the main 6, but before he can do anything else, he starts feeling weak again, and he decides that he doesn't need anyone slowing him down, and that he will free the Umbram alone. Something that Chrysalis doesn't take lightly, and we get a flashback where Chrysalis explains that the Umbram are cruel and unfeeling creatures, and if Sombra unleashes them, they're not only going to conquer Equestria, but also they're going to take all of the emotions of all of the creatures of Equestria, something that obviously Chrysalis doesn't want. And she tries to reason with Sombra, but this one would be in vain, and she ends up leaving. And we jump to Cadence finally meeting Hope, and Hope tells her about her time with the Umbram, but Cadence is shocked at this because she tells that the Umbram are just evil creatures, something that Hope doesn't believe in. Cadence giving the benefit of the doubt to Hope and going to the Umbram dimension, where they're greeted by Rabia, the first Umbram that recognizes Hope, where Rabia is excited to see Hope, but when she sees Cadence, she is distrustful at first, because she thinks that Cadence will harm them, but they make a deal and Rabia shows them around the Shadow Prison, where everything seems to be okay at first, until we see the daughter of Rabia, and it's in here where we learn the truth about the Umbrams, that these are not innocent beings we thought at first, but rather monstrous creations that were using Hope to escape. But fortunately Cadence and Hope would escape with a teleportation spell, where Hope tells Sombra the truth about his kind, but all of this is interrupted by Twilight and her friends. Twilight accidentally hurting Hope in the process, and the comic ends with Sombra unleashing the Umbram army. And we move on to issue 37. On this last part of the story, Twilight and Cadence are being judged by Sombra and the Umbrums for the supposed crimes against them, where they're sentenced to being transformed into stone. The Umbrums requesting Sombra to get Hope, and it's when Sombra gets to Hope's room that everything in this comic changes. Hope seems to be accepting of this situation. Sombra is still trying to explain his plan to conquer Equestria. Something that Hope doesn't care about. She just wants to be with her friend, even if this means choosing the wrong side. But Sombra doesn't get it and tells Hope that he became what he is because it was his destiny. Hope telling him that he's a fool for believing that. Hope revealing to Sombra that she never became a princess because she was looking for him, to be with him, because without him by her side, what was the point? And when Hope and Sombra goes back to the Umbrum, they're preparing to destroy the Crystal Heart until the rebellion starts attacking the Crystal Empire, where we get a fight with a lot of different characters like the Apple family and even Rarity's family, which is pretty awesome to see. And throughout the fight, it's surprising that Sombra doesn't do anything, he just stares at the Crystal Heart, and when one of the Umbrums tells him, "What do you see in the Crystal Heart?" Sombra just replies with, "Myself." The Umbrum telling Sombra that maybe it's broken, where Sombra replies with, "No, it's working fine," and tosses the Crystal Heart while thanking Hope. With this, Sombra finally makes his own destiny, even if this means his death, but Hope is not ready to let her only friend go, and with the help of the princesses, Sombra finally becomes a real pony. And finally, Sombra and Hope are together, where the two of them set out to find the pieces of Princess Amore to bring her back, and with this, ending the comic and this amazing arc. After reading these comics again, I can say that I enjoyed them, not only because of the stories and the characters and of course the arc, but because what they did for Sombra. Let me explain myself. Sombra in the show is a one-note character. He's evil and the only purpose of him to be there is to be the monster of the story. And while yeah, you can argue that some villains were like that in the show, Sombra stands out to me because not only he was a one-note character, but he was one of the most disappointing villains at the time. And when he was done justice, it was a little too late. While Sombra in the comics is not entirely like that. Yes, he's evil, but he has more emotions and he has a more understandable and emotional story. This is a story about what will you do with your destiny. Will you choose it and enjoy it, or let someone else choose it for you? Not only that, but also about how loyalty can be dangerous if taken to the extreme, because yes, being loyal to your friends is a good thing, but not if you're willing to drop and destroy everything in your life. But what do you guys think? Which Sombra do you like more, and would you guys like to see more comic videos like this? Leave it down in the comments, and remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to joining this amazing community that we have. And remember, take care guys, I'll see you in the next video.